Yeah, my name is David Kennedy. I've taught history at Stanford University for 49 years. I teach mostly American history, and most of my publication, writing, research has been about the United States in the 20th century. It's interesting to me that in this election, foreign policy, as defined or addressed by both the principal candidates, is not much of an issue. I think both of them agree that the country is tired of the last decade plus of warfare. Without much to show for it. The results of the interventions that the United States has made in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, and the great tar baby that is Syria, really not much to boast about in any of those instances. And I think at some level the public at large, though they're not as engaged with the military as an institution as they once were, I think citizens at large are just tired of this kind of sacrifice and expenditure without any very tangible results. So foreign policy doesn't figure very largely in the current discussion. You could argue whether that's good or bad. You might say, well, yes, it represents the sentiment of the public that we've had enough of warfare for a while. But another perspective on this is it goes to the point I was making a moment ago, that to the extent that this election is not really ventilating issues about and surfacing issues about foreign policy in the military, it's yet another instance or point of data in the argument that the civil society in general just doesn't take much notice of the military. World War II and also in the conscript era of the Cold War, the force was drawn from all sectors of society, maybe not with perfect equity, but certainly much more than it is today. So the sectors of society from which the force is drawn are some of our least advantaged fellow citizens, now compose the armed forces, and they come from those sectors in our society that have the least effective political voice. So you add all this together. The force is relatively small, it's relatively cheap, it's composed of underprivileged people who have lesser political voice. And what happens? The force gets easier to use as an instrument of policy than it was in another era. And this has been studied by the Congressional Research Service, and there's some quite striking numbers to this. In the era between the end of World War II and 1973, so the Cold War era essentially, it's 28 years, 1945 to 1973, there were 19 overseas deployments of the American military. The big ones were Korea and Vietnam. Since 1973, go to the all-volunteer force, down to 2013 when the data were collected, so it's a 40-year period, there were 144 overseas deployments. Now, there's a lot of argument about what constitutes a deployment and are Korea and Iraq comparable. I mean, there's all kinds of quibbling you can do about this. But on the face of it, the difference between 19 deployments in the conscript era and 144 in the all-volunteer force era strongly suggests that the nature of the force we have makes it easier for the political leadership, the commander-in-chief, to use it as an instrument of policy than it would have been or was in another era when we drafted the force from all sectors of society, and when we deployed it, we disrupted society rather badly. Now we have a very small force, and we can deploy it without civil society breaking a sweat. I think we would be well served if we had a more focused discussion about what are the priorities of our foreign policy objectives, what are the means that we have at our disposal to pursue those, what's the relative cost of different means of pursuing those objectives, and rethinking just how easy it has been for the last 40 years, really, to use the military as an instrument of policy.